live from the J.C. Newman Cigar Studios and the Gurkha Cigar Studios in the great state of New Hampshire. Welcome to the Smokin Tabacco Show with your hosts, Matt Tobacco and Pat Chamberlain.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Smokin Tabacco Show. My name is Matt Tobacco from SmokinTabacco.com, and I'm joined here by my co-host and my peer at Smokin Tabacco, Mr. Patrick Chamberlain, attorney at law.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. Is that how you pronounce that? Oh, here we go.
Bonjour.
Dimming the lights down again.
Oh, 'cause you don't need... that's a little too low. There you go.
Gotta move into the scene here a little bit. I think the camera was a little bit tighter this week. I don't know why. Are you comfortable?
It's romance lighting.
I like that.
I don't. No, I'll just stay on that half of the table.
You know, you ruined that. That could have been...
Nah, it didn't need
Carney would have played into it. He would have been like, you know, it's intimate. It's nice. I would be like, yeah, I like that. You're no fun. You're no fun. But anyway, we are back, and we have an interesting show for you tonight. We have Cigar Rights of America is with us tonight, so obviously there's a lot of things there that we're going to talk about and ask questions about, and I hope you came prepared with all of your lingo there that you know about that. We talk about legislative stuff and all the things that they do, and, you know, it's important. It is. We talk about it all the time. You know, this stuff is important. That's why we do it. But this, you know, there's a lot to it, so we'll get into it. But and then we'll talk about what we're smoking in just a moment, because I think there's a lot of people out there who will probably get really excited about it if you haven't been able to figure it out already. But we'll save that for the segment. But let's bring them on, shall we? It's Mike and Cody from the Cigar Rights of America, and we're gonna bring them on screen. And welcome to the show, guys. How you doing?
Great.
Doing well.
Great. Thank you,
us.
Matt. Thank you, Pat.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you guys on the show. I don't think anyone from Cigar Rights of America has been on our show before. So it's great to finally have you guys here, asking some questions and hearing from you guys and whatnot. So it's great. And anytime, you know, we can get exposure, you know, to all the different groups that, you know, help with this industry, I think it's fantastic. It's something that I believe in a lot. So great to have you guys here. Really, I appreciate it. This is great. It's always important when any of you guys are around. So, but first and foremost, before we get too far into the show, we're going to talk about a couple of things, a couple of our sponsorships and segments before we get too far. First, we're going to talk about what we're smoking, which, as always, brought to you by the number 2 guyscigars.com. That's right, the number 2 guyscigars.com. Head over there today for an amazing selection of cigars and accessories. Order something old, order something new, only at the number 2 guyscigars.com. Gentlemen, are either one of you smoking with us tonight?
Unfortunately, no, I'm not. I'm inside my house. It's been raining here today.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no. I always have a cigar when I do podcasts. I'm usually out in my truck, and I sold my truck, so I need to get a new cigar smoking vehicle.
Well, we're smoking here in the studio, so these cigars are for you guys tonight. We're both smoking the new Solita Red, the Sobremesa Solita Red. From, who is it from? I want to hear you say it.
Yeah, well... Just kidding. I'm not going to do a sock impersonation.
Come on.
Dunbar Tobacco and Trust.
That's right. DTT.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we're 2 months in, so I just want to touch on this while it's topic of conversation. 2 months in, so we've done our first 2 contests for Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. So March, we have a new contest. People apparently don't like to take photos. That's what we learned. They love to write, and they love to talk shit. But then it's like, all right, now we're doing photos. And it was like, nobody wants to take photos. So we're back to the writing. Now, last time we had you guys write in, we had you roast Steve, and that went way better than I think we anticipated it going.
Yeah.
That was holy shit. Now it's time to redeem yourselves, because Steve knows everything you guys said about him. So now you have to say something positive about DTT. So for this month, you got to write in, and you got to tell us some of your favorite things about DTT, or, because I don't know, for some reason I think this would be better, or suggestions for Steve. Something he needs to make, something he needs to change, something he needs to fix, a cigar idea. I don't care. Say something positive, though. No more negativity, no more roasting. That's done. Write in and say something positive or make a suggestion for Steve, and I will definitely pass those along to him as well. I'm sure he'll be more excited to read those than the roasts, which some of them were pretty good. I'm not going to lie. But same way, head to smokintabacco.com, go to the Contact Us page. You can submit them that way, or you can email us, Pat or Matt or Nicole at smokintabacco.com, and we'll collect them and we'll pick the best one like we did last time. And that person's going to get a box of Dunbar and Tobacco and Trust and a DTT mug, courtesy of Steve Saka and Dunbar and Tobacco and Trust. And as always, cutting and lighting our cigars with us, we have our friends from SD Dupont. That's right, Shake Up the Legacy. I have my limited edition Opus X 25th anniversary Maxi Jet. And Pat, I know you have your stuff. What do you have over there? Line 2?
Yeah, I have.
You got that Davidoff one, that Zeno Davidoff one. That's a collector's item.
Davidoff. Oh yeah, it is. I forget what's it 80th birthday maybe?
I think so. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a cool one. Don't ever lose that
No,
one.
100th.
Oh, yeah. I know it's a collector's one, but yeah, that's cool. Don't ever lose that. It's fantastic. Anyway, ask your local retailer today for SD Dupont products. Guys, now it's time to shine. Welcome to the show. The Cigar Rights of America is an important group. Obviously, it's a group that does a lot of things that I continuously say on these shows time and time again that I think not a lot of people know about, or if they do, appreciate. And that's why I always try to, build that up for all of you people from all the different groups. Because, at the end of the day, let's face it, everybody knows tobacco, smoking, it's something that a lot of people hate for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes there's people who don't know why they hate it. But, with that comes trouble. And people try to take it away. And that's where you guys come in. And that's what you guys do most of the time. Now, I think what I want to do is, and Mike, you can go first. Just to make it easy, I'll let you go first. For those who don't know, now I think most people have heard of Cigar Rights of America, but maybe just in case for those who don't know, just give us a brief rundown on what exactly it is that the Cigar Rights of America is and what do they do.
Thank you, Matt. My pleasure. So in 2008, we were constituted. It was on the heels of a children's health initiative that would have taxed cigars at $10 a cigar. And that really galvanized the industry. And a group of manufacturers, as well as a retailer, Jeff Borshowitz, and the founder of Prometheus, Keith Park, and Carlos Fuente Sr. was instrumental in organizing manufacturers. We formed Cigar Rights to defend premium handmade cigars only. And fast forward about 17 years later, we have a historic vacator. We've been effective in many state campaigns, and we've developed meaningful relationships both in the administration and with Congress.
Yeah, I mean, I know that most recently, one of the big things that, you kind of have the bragging rights to, or, can celebrate, is the Judge Betta decision with the FDA over the I can't talk today, with,
Deeming rule.
The deeming rule. Sorry, I don't know why I kept wanting to say registration. I wanted to say regulation. But with the deeming rule, which I know then the FDA appealed, and that got struck down again, right? So, which is big and fantastic. So now that means what? The FDA has to go back to their drawing board and figure out what bag of tricks they want to use now, because they can't go about it the same way. What exactly happens now? I'll let you guys go first.
Court directed the federal district court to look at some definitional issues. But yes, it means in balance that we're no longer, nor have we been since the vacator was issued, under the federal regulatory schema. And you're absolutely right. FDA can, and in all likelihood, will come back, and they'll redeem and start the rulemaking process anew. So this is not finality, but rather a stay until they return.
Yeah. Well, so for now we live to see another day, and for the time being, which
That's right.
which is good. Which is good. And like you said, I think a lot of people when this happened, kind of echoed the same sentiment. It was like the war is not over, so like don't just go back to living your life comfortably forever. But like for now it is, and it's gonna come back, and there will be something else. But for now we've made it across another hump, so which is good. But don't get too comfortable, and despite that, we continue to see, and I'm not sure on the state level how much you guys get involved, but I know despite all of that, we continue to see state by state, and it feels like there's a new one every month, passing flavor bans on flavored tobacco, flavored cigars, etc. Which it seems to be the one like kind of loophole that the states themselves are using to get some of the products off the market, and I'm not sure how much that I know the PCA does a lot of stuff state to state. I'm not sure how state to state you guys are, if you're kind of more at the federal level. But it seems to me across the board, flavored stuff's going away just amongst the states themselves. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, or if maybe there's something different there that we don't see or whatever. But that seems to kind of be like the new plan of attack for at least some of it.
Cody,
Yeah, Matt.
please.
I'll take that. Yeah, we're very active. We're obviously active at the federal space, but we're very active in the state, in the 50 state capitals, and then, even in some areas at the municipal level. But yeah, the states, has been very active this year. I mean, to your point on the flavor ban stuff, those are certainly starting to crop up quite a bit more frequently. And the unfortunate thing about this, I was just chatting with Mike earlier tonight about, a bill in Oregon that had a hearing yesterday that we've been tracking since early January. These bills tend to follow a certain pattern. And, while they don't really capture premium cigars at the onset of the way they're written, there's been a qualifier that's put in there that basically says that, if Cigar Aficionado writes something about it, or, you guys post a review about a cigar on a blog, or Coop does the same thing and says, I picked up, hints of chocolate or coffee. These regulators at the state level are assuming that these products are flavored, and then therefore are actually banning them by their classification of being a flavored cigar. Now, we know that those cigars indeed are not flavored, and they fit the definition that was adopted by the U.S. District Court. But that's just the way that these bills are being written in overly broad manners. But beyond, the flavor ban thing, the big thing that's happened this year is, we saw our first bill at the state level that would grant local authorities from the state to prescribe the amount of nicotine that was acceptable in a product. So it would essentially set nicotine standards and limitations at a state level. We've certainly seen that proposed at the federal level, and that rule, that was shelved earlier this year. It wasn't exactly shelved; it was moved to a longer-term status. But seeing that pop up in Hawaii, and then you put that against the backdrop of this rising tide of nicotine-free generation bills, that have, first, gathered, a foothold in Brookline, outside of Boston suburbs, and some of the surrounding communities have now gone, statewide, where they proposed it at the state level. Same thing in Hawaii. We've seen it in Indiana, Tennessee. So, the proposals for that. So, tobacco writ large is sort of under attack. And the unfortunate side of this is a lot of times premium cigars are getting caught up in it, which I think we all know are wholly different than these traditional combustible tobacco products that these bills, these regulations are attacking.
Right.
So, yeah, the states are very, very troublesome. And it really is the next frontier for, our fight, because a lot of this stuff is going to get shifted to the state level now that the federal government is sort of taking a somewhat hands-off approach with the new administration.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the generational stuff too, because that also seems like well, we'll let the states ban it, by age, and then eventually it'll just filter itself out, which that's really scary because, like you said, like, and I know Brookline, Massachusetts. We live up here in New Hampshire, so I mean, I work down in Boston, and so I know Brookline, Massachusetts, and every time I pass through there, I'm just like, this town sucks. Like, just because I think of that every time, I'm just like, this sucks. These people actually did that, but it's scary because it's like, you're seeing it more and more, and I know, and you guys probably know about it too, but just I won't really get into all the specific ones just because I can't remember them all, but I know that there's a few other like local towns that there are down in Mass that were like, I heard that they, at the city level they tried to, propose them or whatever, and they got struck down. But, it's the fact that, more and more and more you're hearing of more and more places trying to, introduce these bills and get them to pass, and it's like, oh shit, like this is how no smoking indoors stuff happened years ago. As I'm 31, so I don't quite remember it, and I'm not sure how old you guys are, but I'm sure if you're older than me, you probably remember it even more than I do. But it was like it's that thing that started in California, and it was like, oh yeah, like no smoking, and restaurants and bars and places like that, and then all of a sudden it was like, now you can't smoke anywhere in the U.S. So that's how these things begin. It's like, they start a little bit here and there, and then like, and it gets bigger, and then everyone does it. And, for me, it's like the thought that like someday, like my daughter, who, I want to share cigars with when she's older, to be thinking like, oh, you can't have cigars because you were born after 2005. Like, that's ridiculous to me. It really makes me sick to my stomach. But again, that's why we have people like you guys come on the show to talk about it, let people know about it. What can people really do? Is there anything the average consumer can really do, to help with these issues? Outside of just, writing letters to like, senators and whatnot. I mean, are there petitions and things like that they can sign, or anything they can do to kind of like help, push back against these bills, or
Yeah, so certainly, on the state levels, we have that up on our website under the Take Action section at www.cigarrights.org, and you just go to the Take Action section, and we have stuff up, for the states. It's a process of getting everything up because at the beginning of the new year you get tons of bills that come in. But there are a handful that are up right now in the 10 to 12 range, since we're to track them based off how much movement they're getting. So there's the option to do that. But the other thing is, you just have to stay involved, unfortunately, in your local politics, especially when it comes to stuff like that. The unique quirk about Massachusetts in general is how these boards of health are really empowered to make decisions when it comes to tobacco policies, which is how we've ended up with these nicotine-free generation policies being adopted from town to town. And so, like I said, the unfortunate side of that is oftentimes these public health directors and these boards of health just decide that that's what they're going to do and take it out of the hands of the city council, the mayor, whatever, each sort of unique government structure these towns have. And, there's no accountability to the voters for that. These are people that are appointed they're, never really elected. So you have to engage, unfortunately, with these boards of health at that level. And then when they, are courageous enough to actually open it up to public hearings about it, then you have to go and advocate to have your voice heard. That's really it. Because your hands are already tied behind your back in a state like Massachusetts when it comes to tobacco products in general, and then the governing structure doesn't allow for a citizenry to have a lot of power when it comes to pushing back against stuff like that.
Yeah, I used to live in Massachusetts. I lived there for 27 years, and then I moved to New Hampshire because I had enough. It's not even, the tobacco stuff for sure, but just, for other, I'm sure you guys know this, but for other people, if you think the tobacco stuff is wild, just try living there. That place sucks. It really does. It's super expensive. They tax you on everything. The taxes are ridiculous. They keep going up. I was getting off that sinking ship. So, yeah. And so when I saw that stuff happen with tobacco in Massachusetts, I wasn't surprised. I'm like, it's Massachusetts. I mean, what else is new? But still, I mean, there's a lot of states that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, where I feel like it's not so much of a fear because of just how those states are. Not that anyone's immune to it, but, I think there, obviously, as you guys know, some states are better than others, and that always can change, But for now, you have some, like, that that you're probably going to have issues with tobacco products, and others, like Florida, probably not, at least for the foreseeable future. But again, I think it's important to talk about these things because, and you and I talk about it all the time. And you've dealt with some of this stuff. And when you interned with PCA and, with your legal background, you understand some of the things that get talked about with, more specifically. And I know you've seen it, it's ridiculous. It really is. And it sucks to think about, too. Like, it's like people just want to live, man. People just want to live. They just want to smoke their cigars and be left alone. But, to like your point before, like, yes, there's other tobacco products out there that are, different. The way they're made, what's put into them. There are certainly a lot of tobacco products where there are things added to them, which is, I think, for those of us who follow tobacco as a whole, I think we know that. That there's a lot of chemicals that have gone into certain things. But time and time again, the cigar people have always said, that's not us. We're different. Our process is different. The way it's made, the way it's grown, the way it's cultivated, the whole thing. But it doesn't matter. It seems to me like it's still tobacco. I don't care. Make it go away. And that's disappointing. But one of the things I will ask you, and I think you kind of alluded to this before, but I might have missed part of it. I've been asking this a lot with a lot of the groups and stuff. With this new administration, with the Trump administration, what has been the feeling in regards to the government and tobacco with this particular group that's here now?
Well, we had quite a first week of the new administration. There were 4 major rules that were either withdrawn or placed on long-term status, with the menthol and characterizing flavor rules being shelved, and the nicotine and the tobacco manufacturing processes, and they were put on a long-term status, which has the functional equivalent of likely being shelved for the 4 years of the administration. So it was off to a great start. I think from the regulatory standpoint, we're feeling encouraged at the federal level. We, like everyone, are watching very closely what develops with tariffs and trade, because that could certainly have an impact, either directly or indirectly, if the economy doesn't respond well to it. So
sure,
that's something we're keeping a close eye on.
Yeah, because, I mean, right now, it's Mexico, China, and Canada, I think, are the main ones he's got the tariffs on, which that can go many different ways just among those 3. But to my knowledge, there's no other tariffs like on any other countries that he's really imposed that are like on Nicaragua or Dominican or like anywhere that with a lot of the cigars are made and they come in. I don't think there hasn't been any tariffs imposed on any of those countries, right? It's just kind of like those 3.
No. Yeah, so that's the 3, main ones right now. What's coming down the road? I mean, you have to look at this, in 3 separate ways. You have the 3 immediate ones that he's announced, China and Mexico and Canada, all, purportedly relating to, the issue regarding fentanyl coming into this country. And then there's the threat that he's continued to say that he's going to levy tariffs on Europe and the EU. They're part of it's due to the ongoing Boeing dispute from when he was first in office, and then just his general feeling that many of the European countries that make up the EU are running trade deficits with the United States, and it feels like there's certain taxes and tariffs, barriers to trade and entry that he disagrees with, and so he wants to see, those equaled out. And then there's the whole threat of reciprocal tariffs across the country or across the world that are, set to technically take effect in April 2nd. And so you're looking at all of that. When it comes to the countries and, DR and CAFTA, we haven't heard anything on that yet. It seems to be, the one good thing is that the DR CAFTA countries all run surplus. The United States has a surplus with them, and so that type of focus hasn't caught his eye. If it was a deficit, you could think, there could be other issues, but because the surplus, that's a positive thing for those countries. But where these tariffs are really going to hurt, manufacturers potentially is the retaliatory tariffs that are going to come from Canada and Mexico, and then the EU if Trump follows through with that. Canada has already released their list of products that they are retaliating against, and premium cigars are on there. So, the domestic manufacturers, what they ship to Canada, are going to have that 25% tariff unless things change here in the next few days, which is always, a potential with this administration.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is the prices of stuff up there in Canada, especially cigars, is already ridiculous. I mean, one of our team members lives in Canada, Mitchell Santaga, who lives in just outside of Vancouver. I mean, we ask him all the time, so, hey, how's it going? It's like, what we call a $15 cigar here is like $50 up there.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, Mike and I, both of us, independently were in Canada not too long ago, and we both had that same thought. It is. I mean, especially, there's the Cuban market up there, and those, you look at the prices that we already know about that, and then you factor in all the Canadian taxes. And, up there, the New World cigars have really started to take off because, one, Cubans aren't as readily available anymore because they're all going other places. And two, not New World cigars are just more affordable in Canada at the pricing structure. I bought 3 Cuban cigars and ended up paying over $220 up there when I could have bought, 4 or 5, 6 New World cigars for half that price, even with the high taxes.
Right. Yeah. And the quality is better, too.
Yeah, I was going to say,
exactly.
I prefer them to the Cuban cigars. I was surprised maybe 10 years ago at a trade show. I met a number of the Canadian representatives that distributed cigars. And I was shocked even back then at how high a percentage the Central American and DR cigars enjoyed in their humidors. And it seems that that's happening around the world, that once people can do a fair comparison and they don't have this Cuban-centric thought in their head, that our cigars, I think, are better. And I know for Cuban purists that might be a wild thought, but when you look at so much of what Cubans have done recently in the last 10 or 15 years, bigger ring gauges, Maduro wrappers, really Ligero-rich blends, the return of the Perfecto shakes, every single one of those were led by our folks. So we've been leading the vanguard of cigar ideas and development for a really long time now. And they've been, I think, following us. But when I have a choice, I smoke what we have here in the country. I think it's the best in the world.
Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing, too. Price of Cuban cigars went up on not everything, but like Trinidad and Cohiba, I know, went up like 300% last year, 2 years ago. Everything went up, but those being the premier brands, they went up the most. And now you can go to another country, because you can't buy it here. You can go to another country, and you can buy a box of the Cohiba Robusto, which arguably one of the more famous ones, from history. That used to be, what, $600 for the box? 25, $650, give or take. That box is $3,000 now. It's like $2,500 to $3,000 for that box. So you go and you spend that kind of money, so you can say you have them, and then a minimum third of that box, maybe more, they're plugged. You can't even smoke them. it's not even like, you hear these people like, I only smoke Cubans. And I'm like, oh, why? Like, it's like running with one shoe. It's like, why? You could, like, you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, you spend all that money, you get these cigars that are not what they used to be. And I know people probably, half of it is people just want to say that they're smoking them. But even now, I think that the time for that is past. I don't think Cuban cigars are a bragging right anymore. I think that like you guys just said, I totally agree with you. I think they've fallen behind all of the Central American and Dominican cigars that are on the market today, and you see they're continuing to take more market share worldwide, especially considering the fact that even outside of that, like you guys alluded to earlier, most of the Cuban cigars now, they're going to Asia because the Asians own half of Habanos. And that's where they're all going. I mean, this is no secret. It's all going to China because there's a market for it. And then even Habanos, in their press release when their pricing increase went up, they said, we're basing our pricing off of the Hong Kong market. I mean, they were flat out, they flat out said it, which told us, like, oh, well, we know who's, pulling the strings now with Cuba. And that's when the prices went through the roof. And, my wife was over in England because her family's from England, and I remember she went into a humidor and she was like, there's 2 Cohiba 3-packs and there's like 1 Romeo. That was all they had. And, and I talked to people all over, and even up in Canada with Mitchell, he's like, more and more people smoking New World. There's not as much Cubans in the ones we have. People don't want to pay for it anymore. So I think that's very true. I agree with that sentiment. And I think that's just going to be the way it is for a while. So...
I think there's been a positive effect. I was a tobacconist for 17 years, and I always noted how inexpensive cigars were. Because if you thought of how a gentleman spends an hour of time, if you consider restaurants, women, or golf, or shooting, any of these things, they cost in relation to cigars far more. And you can have an amazing 2 hours with a friend or alone with your thoughts for an amazing cigar for $10, $15, $25. And the interesting benefit is I think we're seeing more, and perhaps I'll pose that as a question for you guys because I'm removed from the humidor now that I've been a professional lobbyist for so many years. But it seems that there's a lot more in the upper tiers, and the upper tiers keep climbing. What have you seen that in terms of the pricing?
I'll actually defer over to Pat because Pat actually worked I actually never worked retail, but Pat has worked retail, so you probably speak to that even better than I can.
Yeah. And at some point, when you want me to do questions, tell me because I have a list of miscellaneous things.
Oh, you can do whatever you want whenever you want.
To answer that question, I mean, it's been interesting because there definitely has been an increase in, I guess they'll call it ultra premium cigars. And, it's kind of tough because when you start off with where did the trend come from, I really don't know. I think, I remember, this is, predates me working in the humidor, but obviously Davidoff was known as that prestigious brand. They had their own humidor space.
Which they've had for a while, yeah.
And a lot of companies have, and we talked about this last week, started mimicking, like we said, like the white label is like the premium Connecticut cigar now. Like every top Connecticut cigar has a white label. You have Rocky Patel, you have Ashton, you have like Padron de Damaso, that's a white label. Like it's the Monte white. Like everyone does a white label.
The double diamond, the Doble Diamante that came out for $150. White box.
So I noticed a lot of, ultra premium Connecticut's were hitting the market, and then I think just because of COVID, everyone was just getting into cigars, and it's almost like how Blanton's now have Buffalo Trace products. It's people spend more money for it than the person that was doing Buffalo Trace is trying to get like the Stags or trying to find the Pappies. It's maybe that hobbyist aspect of people, and I think in turn there's been more of a demand for. What is an expensive cigar? What is the best of the best, or purported to be the best of the best?
Right.
And then we started seeing the increase in packaging. Now we have almost every ultra premium release comes in some limited humidor. There's always a number count on that humidor. There's only 300 of these made, and then it comes with these rare cigars you can't get outside of this. And it's So I don't really know if it's really the collector aspect of it, but it has increased a lot. Like, I mean, when I started, the Sake Unicorn was the, fuck you cigar, like $100. Most people were like, hey, nothing's worth that much money when it comes to tobacco.
Right.
And then it was kind of funny, but then you have all these other cigars that came out. You have the Marifels that came out, and you have, I mean, the Conviction that came out. You have Altadis's products that's come out. You have the new Alma Fuego that came out.
Mm-hmm.
You have even for foundation standards, the Night Commander, which is, I mean, it's like, I think that's $50, $45, but still, like, for foundation,
lot, yeah.
their most expensive cigar was $16, doing
Right.
something that's almost triple the MSRP, and people are buying it, right? Like that one-off unicorn sale 5 years ago is nothing now because it's people are buying these. You have like the Fuente Padron that came out, everyone's buying them. Every new Padron is above like a $30, $40 price tag.
I mean,
now.
even look at the Opus X's, which we've covered in their MSRPs. Some of them are on the higher side, but not as high as what people actually pay for them because a lot of retailers mark them up even more, and people are still paying it. They're still paying it. They're still paying $80 for an Opus X. They're still, they're still shelling the money out for it, and they're getting. And when you compare that to Cuban cigars, I mean, you're getting a better cigar.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're gonna spend the money, it's not gonna be plugged.
This is more of me just kind of assuming maybe why there might be some sort of a trend is.
Yeah.
I mean, there is New World Cigars trying to expand out to the international market, and there's a demand for expensive cigars in the international market. I know, like, one of the reasons that Rocky said the Conviction exists is because it was almost like he was demanded to do it, like, make an expensive cigar. And the money's there. I mean, it's, again, Cubans do set the trend, I feel, in some respects, and it's, I mean, a Cohiba Peque is hundreds of dollars now, and it's just people are buying them, not necessarily in the United States. I mean, there's still some people that obviously would just buy Cubans, and they if you don't smoke a Cuban, then GTFO. But I think that market is just sprinkling into New World cigars, and there's people are buying them, so that's why they're making them.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I remember asking a few people, I kind of stopped and looked around like a year ago, and I was like, they get a $100 cigar, they get a $100 cigar, they get a $150 cigar, and I was asking Koopa all this. I'm like, everyone's going like $100, over $100 for a cigar, and it's like, one of the things that was said to me was like, well, you also have to look at, the world market, like the Cubans, who are demanding these prices around the world. And you see a lot of these companies now, like Arturo Fuente, Altadis, Plasencia, they're international, that are selling cigars all over the world now. And it's like, you have these markets where people are paying that kind of money for cigars, and now some of these New World cigars are getting the reputation that they've had here forever, in other countries, and people are already used to paying top dollar for Cuban cigars that don't perform as well, I think, in many people's opinions today. And so now people are, they're going out on the limb like, all right, well, let's make something ultra premium and let's offer it, and people are buying it. And that's the thing. I ask people, hey, how's that cigar doing? Like $100, and I most of the time, and there's been a few, but most of the time it's people are buying them, and I'm like, okay, as long as they're buying them, I mean, that's, if they're not, then you get all that money just sitting on the shelf. Nope, people are buying them, and I'm like, so yeah, there definitely is and I think it is a combination of things, but there is that trend where people are spending money, like a lot more money, on these products now, and it's and again, I see it, and I ask questions, but I know you were in it, directly, so I know you've seen more of it, so it is interesting. It is interesting though, just to see it, and especially during COVID. I think we everyone was home and they could smoke and work remote. But I remember asking some of the stores, and as sucky of a time as it was also like, dude, we're doing more business now than like ever because everyone's home, and all they want to do is sit around and smoke. The stores around here, I remember, because they do like the curbside, right? Like, We got people calling ordering like boxes. Like not like the guy who used to buy like one box every month is like buying boxes like every other week because like he's just smoking so much now. And I think people got more into it. They found more things, and then they're like, oh, and then it was like a domino effect. And then it was like, okay, now I'm just gonna dump all this money on fucking cigars because now I'm into it more, and like I found more things or whatever it is, and we're seeing these products come to the market, and people are buying them, you know. So yeah, it's fascinating, and most of them are good. Some of them, but you know, but most of them are alright, at least in my opinion. But you said you had some questions too, so whenever you wanna, please.
Yeah,
Don't let me own the show. I mean, it's you know.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great opportunity because we have CRA here to kind of go into,
Of course.
some of the environment around premium cigars now. So, you know, one of the things that I think, and we'll expand upon it, but to start off with, I feel that now that the federal side of things can kind of, in a way, be set aside for some time, one of the thoughts I had is, you know, what is where should those resources go now? And obviously, we've talked in the past about it's more of a self-governance posture that I feel that we should be in at this moment. Like, just because, you know, FDA is not deeming a rule right now, you know, the industry should kind of be productive in the sense of what should regulation look like? Because we're not going to escape regulation. So, you know, setting kind of industry standards and the way that we should be doing things. And I mean, one of the hot topics that we've talked about in the past is, you know, should you be making a cigar that has, you know, some kind of a childhood likeness branding to it? Like, is that something that we should be doing? Or does it take somebody like the CRA to say don't do that? Or should it be, you know, the retailer saying don't do that? Or should it be the consumer saying don't do that? And it's really, you know, like, what is the best use of time right now without having resources going to the federal level right now?
Well, so while I love the question and I applaud the observation that yes, we long predicted that there'd be a cascading effect in the states once we had some measure of decision at the federal level. So that part, 100%. And Cody can speak to that more in what we're doing in the states. But the idea of resource allocation, we need more money at the federal level. There's no like, oh, we can relax now. Right now, we're actively pursuing economic reports because so much of what was done incorrectly was cost-benefit analysis, the lack of epidemiology, and how they misextrapolated. They didn't account for pH and sample size and consumption patterns. And the amount of money at the federal space that we could be spending just in terms of epidemiological literature review and research, in terms of economic research, I could easily spend a budget 5 times as large. And given that we are in a world of reduced combustibility with serious players globally and domestically, as well as within tobacco, like Philip Morris, that are saying, you know, everyone should go non-combustible. And that's before you even talk at the federal level. There are always tax threats. So not only can't we let our foot off, we're investing more and more time and resources in the federal. It's a very dangerous sentiment. And I say this not towards you as much as we've heard this echoed among stakeholders. Oof, you know, we can relax now. It's like, no, we can't. We've got a shit ton of work in the federal space. And I could talk for hours of how much is there. I would defer to as an attorney, Pat, but just from Loper Bright and the Corner Post decisions, that potentially creates such a much larger lift in the federal space because of the way the dynamics in Congress are going to change alone. Um, but we could go in a number of directions. And then you also brought up concepts of self-policing, which I think another great observation. That's something that we've always done very discreetly. We certainly are very respectful of the fact that people are free to promote and market any way they want, but we'll respectfully remind them that they are working inside of a culture that has real vulnerability. And if you choose to market in such a way that depicts people that aren't of age, that's a pretty dangerous ground to tread upon because you're arming the FDA with the exact type of fodder that they will run with. And that becomes part of a noose they'll serve to hang us by. But yeah, please ask some follow-up questions because they're all important areas that you brought up, those three.
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot of I'll be all over the place because it's there's a lot we can talk about,
worries.
and it's as we
Great.
speak, other things come into my mind. So when it comes to the self-regulation aspect, one of the thoughts that I had just in a comparison is, I look at like the Better Business Bureau, for instance, like they certify different businesses to be honest and with the integrity. And then consumers who do business look for that certification to see if that's where they're going to be doing business. So one of the things I was just randomly thinking of was some kind of a certification for tobacco sailors to where if something isn't being done up to that self-regulation standard, that they don't get certified. So then if, when the next deeming regulation comes through, that's something that we can present saying, our membership and our stakeholders are doing things this way, which is going to be up to the regulations that you're proposing. And the bad actors are not, right? And they're not certified by us. And I don't know you need teeth to do something like that. So I don't know if that would look like manufacturing partners would not sell product to them, which that would be another battle, to get that done. But it's something of that sort where there's some sort of I don't want to say license, but label to someone who's doing the right things.
Yeah, so there's been several different ways in which we've considered that over the years. And my tobacco lobbying goes back about 28 to 30 years now. So one concept we looked at was the United States Department of Agriculture has checkoff programs. So when you see the other white meat, or you see things like cheese cubes or yogurt you can drink, those are all checkoff programs for the pork producers, for the dairy council, and pennies of every gallon of milk, or by weight, I believe, with pork, a certain amount is allocated into these funds. And not only do they do research and development, but they can do types of certification, or there's kind of the imprimatur, of a quality product. We also looked at self-policing efforts, which, as I've said, we've always handled more discreetly. The challenge with doing it in one of the ways that you raised, where you approach the FDA, is that if all else is equal and you have honest brokers, and by that I mean a apparatus interested in some responsible level of regulation, you can have those types of talks. But where we find ourselves is that the modern era of tobacco control that began in the mid-90s and then perhaps hit an important inflection point in 2009 when President Obama signed the Tobacco Control Act into law. You had in that period the World Health Organization, under the auspices of the United Nations, institute their Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. So they ratified it in 2005. To date, there are of roughly 193 sovereignties on planet Earth, I believe over 182 countries that have ratified or signed this framework into law that includes things like tobacco cessation and tax schemas and smoking bans. But their end is very clear. It's prohibition. It's bringing prevalence ratios of combustible tobacco products to zero. So they're not shy about the P word globally. What we've seen in the last several years is there was an avoidance domestically for tobacco control, NGOs and municipalities and states to use that P word. But now, as is the case with the nicotine-free generation initiatives, they're not afraid of the prohibition word anymore. They're proud of it. They're really using a laboratory in Massachusetts in a way we discussed at the outset. So you can't have those self-policing discussions with people that want you exterminated. But we do continue having those discussions. The CRA has looked at different ways in which we could kind of serve as that imprimatur of quality. And I think for the people that know, and that's why these types of podcasts are so wonderful. We're very proud and grateful for our co-plaintiffs in the case that ultimately won the vacator with the Cigar Association of America, and of course with Premium Cigar, with PCA. I always hesitate when I say the name because I served on the board of directors of IPCPR. So in my mind, I still have RTDA, which was the predecessor to IPCPR. So at any rate, we love that they joined us, but it's also important to note that Cigar Rights of America 100% paid for that chapter that culminated in the victory. But more importantly, when you read Judge Maida's conclusions, he was very specific, not only with CRA, but why he decided the way he did, first with the arbitrary and capricious finding in 22, and then in the vacator in 23. But it was the option 2 that wasn't considered during the deeming regulation. Option 1 was all tobacco products are treated equally. Option 2, it would have exempted premium cigars. So not many people in the industry know that that was about 30 to 50,000 man hours of the CRA team. We held a definitional congress across the industry. We arrived at a definition, and then we lobbied heavily to have the administration during President Obama's time redact heavily the FDA rule and essentially create the option 2. The other area of evidence upon which he found his vacator and his arbitrary and capricious decisions was on the mountain of evidence. And that epidemiology is an initiative that I started many years ago. And before Cigar Rights of America, you did not have cigar associations talking about health and science. They fought it rather aggressively. They said, you can't make those arguments, only health can. And having spent a lot of time researching at the National Library of Medicine and hiring world-class epidemiologists and toxicologists, my response was, well, why the hell can't we? The truth's on our side. And those two things, the mountain of science and the option 2, were by and large CRA productions. So I mention that because as people learn of what I characterize as the disproportionate level of work that CRA's done to this vacator, that can serve as a idea that you're discussing where, if people were to see some level of endorsement, that they can equate that with, okay, these people are very interested in preserving our rights, and these manufacturers are worthy of the patronage. But it's something we're always having talks about, and we haven't abandoned them, but we're very cautious about self-policing discussions because there are still too many people in the regulatory space that want us entirely extinct, and you can't have these type of rational discussions on policing because it isn't what they want. They want combustibles finished. So it's something that's ongoing, I guess.
So then switching gears to prohibition, specifically generational smoking bans. So when Brookline, Mass. passed their generational smoking ban, I was, I looked at the arguments that were posed against it, and then especially when it went to the SJC, which I mentioned this on the show before, but for the people watching, the Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts is the highest court of law in Massachusetts. So they make law, right? So the lower courts, they interpret law, and then the appellate courts make law. So the SJC is the highest court in Massachusetts when it comes to making law. And they upheld the generational smoking ban. So the interesting thing in that case was how premium tobacco was not represented at all in that argument. And, you know, like specifically the cases that were cited, it was all economic due process, which is the lowest form of scrutiny that a court's going to apply. And the argument case law was, you know, cigarette vending machines, right? Like it was such a far-fetched argument when it comes to trying to prevent something of this nature. And I just found it interesting in the sense it's almost like no one cared. Not like to the sense of this industry didn't care, but it was you know, your audience that was fighting this was like the gas stations with cigarettes. Like that cigarettes was the leading argument for the SJC on whether or not the generational smoking ban should be passed. So premium tobacco wasn't even a thought.
And to be fair, I think the average person, when they hear about this stuff,
they think cigarettes.
Oh,
yeah.
Cigarettes. Oh, yeah, we got to get rid of the cigarettes. It's such a bad, dirty habit. And it's like, sure, but we get lumped into it too, and it's, you know, like we've all been saying, it's like, well, we're not the same, you know. And I don't want to be like, yeah, like, down with the cigarettes, because it's like, as much as it's different, you know, but at the same time, it's like, their battle is not our battle, or it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. You know, it's a different product, like we've all said. You know, we just get sucked into it.
But it's having people represent the industry in those municipal hearings, because even like Bangor, Maine, same deal. Like a town council meeting, it's all about cigarettes. You have that one guy that goes to every town meeting and objects to everything, arguing, and nothing about premiums mentioned. And now that's not anything that the CRA is doing wrong, but my perspective, which I said on the show before, is consumers have to start taking an interest in this stuff, because like if you lived near Brookline, like you and I live relatively close to Brookline, it's representing that.
I work
cause.
in Brookline sometimes. Yeah,
it's, you know, it shouldn't just be these associations doing all the legwork, because at the end of the day, like it's I mean, we talk about funny, it's not big enough.
Well, it's also a tricky road to go down, you know, because look, if you're a consumer of age now, the law doesn't affect you. And so people sort of tend to have an apathy towards, well, it's not going to affect me. Why do I care?
Bingo.
And then, you know, and then you also look, well, like, well, the people that does it is going to affect are people that are underage now. So it's not like you're going to go and gather up a bunch of, you know, people that are 17 years old or, you know, 16 years old and say, hey, go advocate for your future cigar rights for a product you, one, may not know that you ever want to consume. And or two, you don't even have any clue about it. You're just not thinking about it, and so you're sort of in that, you know, that in between for premium, because you know the apathy is there for people because it just doesn't affect them now because they're of age, and you know I'll say I'll disagree with you a little bit. You know, we never, you know, we don't get involved in you know, we let cigarettes and we let, you know, mass markets fight their own fights. But when it comes to this nicotine-free generation thing, you know, it's more than just about, you know, protecting premium or mass market stuff. You know, it's really about the rights of an adult to make an informed adult decision about a legal adult product. And I just, you know, you're never going to sell me on it. You know, I don't smoke cigarettes, never smoked cigarettes. But you can't tell me that there is a difference between a child that was born on January 1st, 1999 at 11:59 and 59 seconds, and they can buy a cigarette, but that kid born next door at 12 o'clock on January 2nd can't. It just, the way these laws were written make no sense. And, you know, at some point you've got to say, stop. Let adults make decision about legal products. And that's what it comes down to, and that's why you just have that's the message you have to carry forth. It's not about premium. It's not about cigarettes. It's about the rights of an individual to be able to purchase a legal adult product.
Yeah, I mean, I like to make this argument because I think, what about all the people who either die from abuse or kill someone else or kill themselves from drunk driving? What about the alcohol people? You know how many deaths there are in that every year? No one's pulling the alcohol off the shelves. No one's putting generational bans on buying booze. Yet, how many people have been affected by alcoholism or died or almost died or had a DUI or killed someone or hurt someone drunk driving when they weren't supposed to be? What do most kids do underage? They buy booze. How many kids underage are buying cigars? You know what I mean? No one's talking about that though. But yeah, we're the bad guys.
I mean, I'm sure Mike could tell you more about it, but as a retailer, he took that serious. I mean, Mike, you can speak to how serious that is as a retailer, and you too, Pat.
Yeah, I found brick and mortar stores have always been vigilant on carding. In the mid 90s, when the FDA started sending investigators out for cigarettes, they found that 70% of young people smoking were able to just either it would be a sibling bought it for them or they would buy it because there was very lackadaisical carding from convenience stores. And by the time 2009 rolled around and they actually wrote the Family Smoking Prevention and Tobacco Control Act into law, while they used the term epidemic, it no longer was. There actually had been really important strides in carding between the mid-1990s and 2009. But that's something I think, proud to say, brick and mortars have always been really vigilant. And I'll add the direct mail companies all use state-of-the-art age verification, at least the larger ones with which I'm familiar to. So that's something as an industry I think we're really good on.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that too. I mean, I didn't work in a store all the time like you did and you did, but I just, from what I see and what I know, looking back to when I was a teenager, I'm like, I feel like it's not that big of a deal. But like when I was 14, how many kids did I see come to school with bottles of vodka in their backpack? All the time. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it's right, but it's like, everyone likes to make that argument like, oh, with the kids. I see more kids drinking alcohol than, even smoking cigarettes. I mean, the underage smokers, it was always like the kids that wanted to smoke cigarettes, but like, especially cigars. Like, I didn't see no kids smoking cigars when I was in high school. I mean, I just didn't. I mean, did you?
No.
No. I mean, there was always the few kids that smoked cigarettes, and they knew the older kids that got it for them. But even then, it wasn't like, probably it was 20 years ago. I mean, it was, there was that group of kids, and that was it. But everyone was drinking. And now, what's crazy to me, and I've been saying this for years, especially with Massachusetts, where it's legal now, is we live in a world now where you can't. They're trying to take away your right to smoke cigars or tobacco products, which at one point in time ruled the world. But you can go to a dispensary and you can buy whatever the fuck you want, and you can go home and you can get stoned, and no one's gonna. People used to like meet some guy behind the gas station at nighttime to get a little baggie of weed that sucked, but like that's what you got, and like if you got caught, like you were in trouble. Like now it's like, yeah, you can go to the dispensary, but no, not those cigars, man. We gotta get rid of the tobacco. It's like, what happened? Like, what happened? The world has changed. I mean, Mike, you probably remember a time when you lived that reality, like that was like, oh yeah, like don't get caught with pot. Like, you'll get arrested, and like everyone smoked everywhere. Now you can't smoke anywhere, and they want to just get rid of tobacco altogether. But hey, you know what? Let's open up a dispensary, and we'll make 12% tax. Like, what happened? Like, it's just, I don't know. It's just this world, man. It's changing, and it's crazy. It's crazy. It's just how
it's one combustible that doesn't seem to be challenged.
Yeah.
FDA defers all of that to the DEA.
That's true. I mean, I know federally that stuff is still not, legal. State to state, it's now happening. But you're right. It's like the FDA has their hand in all this stuff that maybe they shouldn't even be touching. And then it's like, hey, so all these states, they got all the weed now, and they got, other things. It's not just like the raw, flour and whatever. They got all these other products that they like put it in. Anyone checking these products? No. But we got our eyes on premium cigars. We're all over that. Oh, all right, cool.
It's funny you bring up the equation with cannabis and premium cigars. And cigars, that bill I was referencing earlier in Oregon, talks about cigars specifically. But in there, they managed to put in legislative text that this does not apply to cannabis products.
Which you also smoke.
They're just, yeah. So they're out for banning flavored combustible products, but they explicitly say this does not apply to cannabis products.
Oh, because it's all about cancer and the smoke and all that. But tobacco is bad. But you could smoke a pound of cannabis. And that doesn't apply.
I mean, the thing with that too is, now this is me speaking out of my realm, because it's more of like I guess a political discussion, but it's all based on what.
Kinda, yeah. I guess.
It's based on what society's accepting, right? Like, I mean, at the end of the day, especially premium cigar, but even like it's a minority of what people think is like the healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
I know.
And when it comes to cannabis, most people like doing it and they think it's fine, so it's public opinion. And unfortunately, people, if there's a cartoon character on a cigar brand, everyone is upset about it, but then you can go into these cannabis shops and it's like unicorn candy or whatever they do for like the edibles. It's not frowned upon. You can also argue craft beer, they have different different industries, so like whatever, but again, beer's acceptable. Everyone loves beer. Everyone drinks.
It's different industries, but it's like the same concept. It's an adult product.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's public opinion.
Yeah,
it's a problem.
I know. Do you guys agree? Do you feel like it's more so you're fighting against a general public opinion of people who just frown upon it? So, it's just it's not considered cool anymore. So we need to put it away. Because and I keep making that argument because I'm like, well, there's other adult products that. You could make so many arguments about, but everyone's cool with that. But to like Pat's point, like, yeah, it's like the public opinion, like smoking is not cool anymore unless it's cannabis or vape. Vape's the new thing.
Yeah, that was one of the focuses of tobacco control, was to denormalize tobacco, and they used a lot of print and ad campaigns that were geared towards young people, essentially saying, be against the man, and the man is these big tobacco companies. So where before the perception amongst youth was that smoking cigarettes was cool, they were successful in these ads saying, if you smoke cigarettes, you're just a lackey of the man, and that's not cool. And in the larger culture, I think we saw similar trends, right? If you recall, when the Tea Party was coming of age in 2010 with that revolutionary House Republican conference class, there was on the one side the Tea Parties that were railing against the man, and then you had the Occupy Wall Street, and they were railing against the man, and they just defined the man somewhat differently, right? But it was really very similar arguments, but the man became the thing to rebel against, and I couldn't agree more. I think the way you phrase that is spot on.
And the funny thing, I don't know how this would play out, but I wouldn't even be shocked if you come to find that, on a planet where just pretend combustible tobacco is just banned, you can't get it anymore. Just pretend that that's a thing. I bet you can still go into a cannabis shop and there's going to be tobacco leaves you can roll a blunt with. There'll be some exception for that.
It's a good point.
The reality of it, there'll be an exception for it.
Oh well, this is for cannabis use though.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree with that, but I feel like I could see that too, just based on other things I see already going on. In which, it's funny. Like I just came back from TPE, and you have the cigar pavilion, you have all the cigar, and then you have like all the other stuff, and you get like the Delta 8 people, the cannabis gummy people, and you get the vape people, you get the pouches people. They all kind of mingle together. And then you see a lot of the blunt wrapper people. I saw them drifting through the cigar area, and there was some intermingling going on there. Then I look at the floor plan for the Premium Cigar Association trade show next month, and there's a blunt wrapper company on the floor. Grab a leaf. And I went, were they there last year? And someone was like, yeah, they were. Remember they had the guy on the ceiling? I'm like, yeah. So, I mean, I don't know, or I guess where I'm going with this, but yeah, to your point, like, yeah, you got blunt wrap people like at the trade show now, like, that's in with the cigar stuff, but yet
it's weird.
Yeah. You're right. I feel like that would be like an exception. Well, it's for cannabis use. What's the fucking difference? Like, I mean, I don't know.
I had somebody come in to Twins once, younger kid, older than 21.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh, are you looking for a cigar? But he's like, oh, no, those aren't good for you. And we're like, oh, why are you here? It's a cigar shop. He was looking for blunt wrappers. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding? So that's just the perception of it is.
It's only cool if you're doing it for what other people think.
I wouldn't even
cool.
say like it's only cool. It's just the public opinion is that marijuana isn't. I don't want to say isn't bad for you. I mean, most people will say it's medicinal or it's not bad for you, but it's just the way that people think tobacco is that it's bad. And it's a lot of people think you inhale cigars too. It's
yeah, they don't know that.
It's a lack of knowledge, and
yeah.
It's just the public opinion.
Yeah, it's true. I agree. And unfortunately, like it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to stop. There's always going to be a large percentage of people who feel that way, and they're going to continue to push for it. And it's sad, man, because at the end of the day, it's like I just want to be left alone. I just want to smoke my cigars. Like, I mean, that's why most people smoke their cigars. They just want to be left alone, or they want to socialize with their friends. But most of the time, even like Mike said before, like you want to see like how much time you can spend on an hour. It's like you can even a $25 cigar, which is usually considered a nicer cigar, and considered a splurge on a cigar. I mean, that's still better than going to dinner and dropping $300, or even $100, or doing God knows what else. Going to the range. You gotta buy 3 cases of ammo. You gotta pay for a lane. I mean, I buy ammo. I know how much it costs. Like, I mean, yeah, he's right. It's a good point, and it's like it's one, and the thing is it's one of those things where like people do it to relax and be left alone, and yet it's like, Jesus, like, get off my ass, will you? Like, I don't know. It's just as people they just can't let people just have their way. I mean, look, if someone else wanted to do something that was, whatever that most people frowned upon, and that's what they wanted to do, I'd be like, great. I don't care. It's not my thing, but like, you knock yourself out because, you get to do that. It's your right. Just don't take away mine. That's the way I look at the world, man. People ask me my opinion on certain issues, and I'm like, look, people want to do what they want to do. Great. As long as it doesn't affect me, I don't care. You can do what you want. It's not my problem. I think that's the way it should be across the board. I don't care. As long as it doesn't affect me, you do you. And leave my stuff alone. You know what I mean? Because I like to do my thing too. I think that's fair. But no, we can't have it that way because we can't have nice things. Isn't that what we always say? We can't have nice things. It's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in now. Guys, I just want to hit our news segment really quick before we get too far into the show because we are... Wow, look at that. It's already almost 9:30. We're really taking off here. It's amazing how fast the time goes. But our news is once again brought to you by Micallef Cigars. Head over to micallefcigars.com today and check out the new color series. And the new color is purple. Is that what Coop told us on Saturday?
Yes.
Because you got the black, the blue, the red. I thought it was gonna be yellow, but I don't know where I got that from. But it's the purple. There's a purple series now coming out. So, which do we know what the tobacco is on that? Did he tell us?
Isn't it supposed to be like some offshoot of the blue?
That's what he said. It was an offshoot of the blue.
Yeah.
So that we'll probably see that at the trade show. But anywho, our news this week. Well, actually, I'm gonna do two because there's something I want to address before the end of the show. I'll do it now. But Plasencia made news yesterday. They named Ed Bello Chief Executive Officer. Plasencia Cigars announced yesterday that Ed Bello will join the company as Chief Executive Officer. Ed will take up the CEO position with effective April 1st and will work closely with Jim Young, the current CEO, to ensure a smooth handover. Following a transition period of 3 months, Jim will continue to support Ed and the organization as an advisor and as a board member. So interesting. We've seen a couple of different staffing things pop up recently, and usually between the end of the year and the beginning of the year, you see the people switching teams, people coming in and out. So not really surprised to see a lot of this stuff. But one thing I did want to address is kind of an in-house news thing regarding our fundraiser for CFCF. And this is on the website as well. You guys can read my full statement that I wrote on this, but I'll give you just kind of the brief highlight of, for those who don't know, our daughter is having surgery on April 1st. And in addition to a lot of the other things that we have going on and stuff with family and stuff with our other careers that we have and taking care of my daughter with all the other free time I have, we decided not to do our Cigar Family Charitable Foundation raffle this year. It's quite an undertaking to put that together. Not that I don't like to do it, but it is a lot of work. It is a lot of work to get all of the prizes, build the raffle page, do this, promote it all the time during the charity to try to raise the money. And we've been very successful. We've raised over $100,000 the first 4 years that we did it, which is mind-blowing. And very appreciative of everyone who's been involved, from the manufacturers who've donated products to the people out there who've spent money on donations and supported the cause. I thank you. And this is not a permanent goodbye, but I have to step back and look at the time that I need right now in my personal life, and I have to find ways to make that better. And unfortunately, it's one of those things where I can't fully commit to it this year, and I don't think it would be right to half-ass this event. So we're going to take a break this year because we have a lot of things going on. So just wanted to let everybody know, because it's that time of the year, and I know everyone's just asking, when's the raffle coming? When's the raffle coming? When's the raffle coming? What are you gonna have a prize? And I know people get excited about it. It's a whole thing, but I have to do what's right for me. And at this time, I have to take a break from it. But we will be back. So don't be too upset, because I know people love it. But just this year, I gotta do what's best for us. So that's our news for this week, and that's just the only announcement I wanted to make. But we'll head
live from the J.C. Newman Cigar Studios and the Gurkha Cigar.
Sorry, I fucked up. I clicked the wrong one. I looked away too quick. But yeah, that's it. So that's our news for this week. Micallef Cigars, check them out. New purple coming soon. And also the raffle. The raffle is on pause for this year, so just so everyone knows. But anyway, back to the show. We are running out of time, so we'll wrap up soon. We're well into the second the overtime section of the show that we normally get into. Did you have any more? I'm sure you do, actually, because I know you. You probably have a lot of stuff you brought to the table. But is there anything else you wanted to hit on before we wrap up the show?
I'll defer that to you. I can keep going, but if you're wrapping up, I mean.
No, I mean, if you have one more point, you could bring something up, but that would probably be our last thing, depending on what you have.
I can probably, let me think of a. So with the Chevron deference getting overturned, what form of regulation could you predict the next run of the deeming rule would look like?
And by what form of regulation. Could you elaborate on that,
So I
or
guess
state
like
it differently?
perhaps like the language that they would be using and how they would define premium tobacco within that regulation.
Yeah, well, our hope would be that the meta definition for a premium hand-rolled cigar would be embraced by FDA. It's essentially the same definition that they had endorsed earlier in a DOJ proposal for an issue that orbited user fees in the courts in Maryland. And it was essentially the same definition that the NASM, the National Academy of Science and Engineering and Medicine, that was hired by FDA to look at the science orbiting cigars, uh, arrived at a similar one. So we certainly hope they would use that. It still isn't. It's clear to us that they'll redeem the shape that it takes and how they go about it. That is a big question, and I think that's also why we're so uh, intent on not letting up in the federal space. We're running appointments every week that is looking at administration and members of Congress, and again, not just for taxes, but there's still a rule on nicotine, even though it was put on long-term status. There's still an open comment period, so I'm still hiring uh, epidemiologists and economic agencies to help our regulatory gentlemen compose that comment. Um, there's still a TPMP rule on tobacco manufacturing that, while shelved, it will return, and we haven't stopped working. So, if there's any great message among several tonight that we really want to underscore is the federal work needs more resources. It's more work. It took 17 years of really hard work, and people think of the vacators. Oh, that's something that happened, in 22 and 23. But we started working on that a long time ago. And, they're never going to stop coming at us, especially when we're going to be one of the last remaining combustibles. So we not only have to do, as you suggested, allocate a lot of resources to the states, we've got to keep on protecting at the federal level. It wasn't just 18 years of work. There was an excess of $5 million spent by our guys on the legal, and there's what we spend annually on lobbying. Some of the big boys will spend in one event for like their catering budget. It's not an exaggeration. We've actually
Oh, I believe you.
plotted that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have one question on that I think's more relatable to the consumer. We haven't talked about it on the show, but the annual CRA packs.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Yes. That's a good point. I'm glad you brought
very
this up.
good way for a consumer to contribute.
Very, very, yes.
How impactful is that every year for you guys?
Oh, it's wonderful. It's all publicly disclosed on our 990 filing, but it accounts for about uh, half of roughly a $2 million annual budget. It's a big number for us. And our guys have just been so generous, not just with their time, not just with all the untold dollars they put in, but in the cigars that they contribute for the success of these packs. And they're amazing cigars. Like all of us here, I think Cody and I are first and foremost cigar lovers, and it's an amazing selection of smokes. But yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy you brought that up. I would have been remiss had I not raised that, so I'm so happy you did. But yeah, we're looking to at maybe tweaking in the future some of the packaging, and so many of those packs have cigars you can't get anywhere else. And then they also many times have represented kind of first launches of a cigar. So that's something we always try to encourage with our guys, and they really rise to the occasion.
Yeah, I am glad you brought that up too. I can't believe we didn't sooner. But yeah, it's a big one because the consumers can buy those. They're readily accessible. They're usually not too hard to find. Because how many of those packs you guys make a year? Like 5,000 packs or something like that? I mean, there's...
We do them twice a year, and that's exactly right. It's
Yeah.
5,000 packs, and an absolute bargain when you consider it's not even one Bahique, right? To return to the earlier conversation.
Yeah, it's true.
For the price of one extremely overpriced Cuban cigar that likely isn't rolled well, you can get a whole selection of amazing world-class cigars.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's great brands in there. There's great blends in there. I mean,
Yeah, when I was at Twins full time, like I always was pushing because it's, for one, you're directly supporting the cause, and
it's a
two,
good, yeah.
I mean it's typically around $200. Again, no tax in New Hampshire, but and yeah, you get it's worth the money. It's, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
extremely. There's not a cheap cigar in there. It's all good smokes,
Yeah.
and it's
LFD puts an Andalusian Bull. Fuente puts an Opus. Pete always puts some sort of limited tatuaje
there's
in
Padron
there.
Blacks in there before
Padron
you could
Black.
get Padron Black.
Yep.
It's
I mean, it's great. I mean, Oliva put something in there, right?
yeah. Oliva's in there. Ashton's in there. Tatuaje's in there.
Yep. Is my father in there separately?
No.
Yeah.
Wait,
No.
no.
Yeah.
Yes.
My
yes,
father.
yes.
Yeah. So I mean, another great factory.
Yeah, they had the Garcia in there
Yeah.
last year.
A factory that we love.
Yeah.
I mean, it's he's right. There's no wild cards in there. It's brands you all know and love. It's great stuff that they make, and it's a good price. And I'll tell you, it is. It's badass. I see it, and I see like the new ones come out, and I'm like, it's never like it's like, damn, that's a good. I'm like, I gotta get one of those. Like it's a cool pack. It really is. You could buy that pack, right, and get money to the CRA, and then go to your next little like hang out with your friends or whatever, and like, yeah, look what I brought. Like, there's enough cigars in there, right? And just like, you want to have a flex, buy a badass sampler like that. Give money to the people who help support that. And show up, and people are like, oh shit, look at that pack. You know what I mean? Like, it's a win-win. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Thank you. No, it's a great endorsement. And if your local shop doesn't carry the sampler packs, please encourage them to. It's for a great cause, and everything we do is with an eye towards preserving this pastime we so dearly love.
And any retailer, if they don't carry them, any retailer can just call you and be like, hey, I'd like to, start carrying them, and so there's no like other requirement for them, right? Is there any sort of...
Well, so we have a rotating group of manufacturers on our board that do the fulfillment and shipping.
Mm-hmm.
So while we try very hard to service the retail shops, we're not directly selling cigars. It's the manufacturers. So fortunately, they're all large manufacturers, but generally the retailers would have to have a relationship with the manufacturer, which is very easy to do.
I see.
You don't have to commit to carrying their portfolio. You just have to, sign up and have a relationship with them. But, it tends to be the case that the companies that do our fulfillment, like Fuente and Newman and Rocky Patel, they all tend to have several thousand retailers, which is generally the vast majority of the brick and mortars in the United States of America to begin with. So that really hasn't been a problem. I think with each pack, there might be one, maybe two retailers that aren't initially licensed, and then we make a call, and then it happens real easy and quick, and But I think it's accurate to say it's statistically insignificant how rarely that comes up.
Yeah.
But
That's
and the only reason is we're not a licensed entity that can sell cigars to consumers, and there's just a whole suite of regulations we have to abide by from a number of different regulatory bodies. So
Yeah,
that's why.
but either way, I mean, it's a great pack, and I would suggest people see them out now. It's spring and fall that you guys put those out. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Roughly, usually. So the
Yep,
spring
that's right.
the spring one for 2025 will be coming out probably soon, next month or so, I would assume.
Uh, Cody, do you know the
I don't.
production
Yeah, we
dates? I
don't have
don't know
any.
them on the top of my
We
head.
don't have an exact date, but yeah, in the spring time frame, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, again, so just to make the point, very soon the next round of packs is going to go out. So keep your eyes out for them, because they're going to be coming soon. So they'll be out there for a while until they're gone. But yeah, so definitely keep an eye out because they'll be back soon. But anyway, guys, I'm looking at the time here, and we're getting towards the end of the show, so I'm probably going to start dialing it down now. But first of all, thank you guys for both being here, and
Oh, thank you.
yeah, and giving
It's
us
been
the
a treat.
opportunity to talk about what you guys do, and to keep it fresh in people's minds, and let people know about, hey, these are the real threats, and this is what you can do, and all of that stuff, because it's important. But I appreciate you guys taking the time. I really do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the evening. And are you guys going to be in New Orleans?
I will be. Pat won't be. I'll be there with
Okay.
Mitchell. I'll be there with my guy from Canada. So there's that.
Well, excellent. Well, I'll definitely seek you out and say hello. And
Absolutely.
Pat, hopefully we can meet face to face another time. But thanks, guys, and we appreciate being
I
guests
really
tonight.
appreciate it.
Been great.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you
really
guys
enjoyed
for.
talking with you.
Yeah, likewise.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. So, but that's going to be our show for this week, and no spare notes this weekend. So it'll be next week. But yeah, as always, head over to SmokinTabacco.com for more news, reviews, and updates from the cigar industry, and we'll see you next week. Take care.